So we came to Birch's Theater. I had about a half an hour that I need to sit down with that crew, with the manager, and like hammer the details out to secure a house for God. We didn't have a house yet. So I asked, and Pastor Erin, well, she's hosting after, she'll probably tell you about this, but I asked Pastor Erin, because we needed a house. We looked at 7 different houses in the area that we lived in. We felt God wanted us to be in. 7 houses, none of them were right. And this is like a church planting days. We were so busy, and it was so crazy. Our family was a bit of a disaster, and so it was hard times. Like a church plant is like starting a business up when the devil's trying to murder you. So it's so hard. Everything is so hard. And so I'm like, every house, I'd have to do the basement, build a bathroom, I'd have to build an office, I'd have to do... And I didn't have any bandwidth for anything but just trying to plant a church, right? And so I told Pastor Aaron, I'm like, well, go back to those 7 houses that we looked at in the area of town we live in. Go back there. We live in Coopers, by the way, which has been voted for 15 consecutive years the best community in Airdrie by the inhabitants of Coopers. It's so funny, like, recently voted. I'm like, it's Coopers that are voting. It's a Coopers vote. So anyways. So I said, here, go buy, I just felt in my spirit, go buy $10 gift cards from Starbucks and go to the neighbors of the houses that we looked at and ask if anybody sells crack in the neighborhood. You know, like, you think I'm kidding. I'm like, ask if there's drug dealers next door. Ask, I want to know. Because the people selling you the house is going to be like, there's no drug dealers next door. You know, like, or whatever. Are there barking dogs? Is there weird people? You know, like... And so I'm like, go give it to the neighbors. And okay, she'll tell you, she threw a little hissy fit. She was in a super bad mood. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, you do that. You want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. She was all mad at me. And I'm like, I have to go to Birchurch Theater and secure a house for God. Can you please go see if you can find us a house? So she took the kids, went. I got a phone call about 20 or 30 minutes later. I think I found our house. Wow. It's a popcorn story, let me tell you. She goes to the house across the street from where we currently live. She goes there and sees the lady who owns our house. Was it the first place you went to, sweetheart? The first place. The lady who's in our house outside on the yard, she goes over there and says to her, and this lady, you got to understand, that she's the fussiest lady in Airdrie. She just painted her entire house. She doesn't need to. She lives there by herself, I think. Maybe with one of her. I'm like, she painted her entire, she did the yard. She manicured the yard 3 different times just to get it right. If a leaf falls in the yard, she's out there. If the snow falls, she's out there. I'm like, this is the person you buy a vehicle from, a house from. She's out there. And Pastor Aaron goes like, hey, we're looking at this house, buying this house across the street. Can you tell us anything about the neighborhood? And then she's like, well, we have 4 kids. And she goes, oh, that house is way too small for you. Why don't you buy my house? Wow. Walks through the house. Got all the right bedrooms, got all the right rooms. Everything is absolutely right, exactly where we wanted to be in town, the best place in town that our family could be. And she calls me up and says, I think I found our house. So there's a couple things I want to bring out there. $10 Starbucks gift cards saved us $30,000 in that house that wasn't on the market. That had been previously listed way higher than the price we ended up settling on. $30,000, $10 Starbucks gift card, reluctant, angry, obedient wife. But I had secured God's house first. Then God could do for my house what I needed to show God that I would do for his house. Because his house was always more important to our family than our house was. It still is. God's like, you take care of my house, I'll take care of your house. And Pastor Aaron and I had been tithing for years and years and years, our entire marriage, in fact, so it gave God something to work with. So if you've never been to church, giving 10% of your income back to the Lord, you've tried other investments, and what the Lord, I'm going to show you his promises, you're going to be like, oh, I had no idea that this was actually available. Unchurched people are the easiest people to talk into tithing because they're like, oh, we can't do this anywhere in the world. Like, this is incredible. If you've never been to a Bible preaching church, I would say, or a church that was afraid to talk about finances, I don't want you to get mad at the pastor that you grew up with and call him up and be like, why didn't you tell us? You know, we haven't been living in the blessing that God planned for us because you didn't say anything, you know. So don't get mad. Some people, I think we come to church and we kind of like tip God a little bit. And so God's like, no, actually I want you to buy some food. You know, I want you to buy because there's the magic is really in the provision that God wants to do. Or maybe if you haven't been to church in a while, you stopped along the way. So I tell my volunteer teams, I'm like, if people come and you haven't been to church in a long time, I'm like, the thing that is probably keeping them away from church is the story that they told themselves about why they stopped giving resources away. Because that money, their heart no longer goes there, so their heart is not in the house of God. And so today's sermon is going to unwind some of that story. So it's going to be like a little bit painful, but you're going to breathe a sigh of relief because I'm just going to be a good dad and just tell you how it works. Malachi is the last prophet to speak before Jesus comes on the scene. The last voice of God we hear in the nation for 400 years. 400 years of radio silence. The main topic of Malachi, the book of Malachi, that God is speaking through the prophet, is tithing, which is coming up right now. So, meaning, the nation, because of their disobedience to the principle of tithing, caused a 400 years of radio silence. That's like going to church 400 years and not hearing God speak. That's boring church. 20 generations. I am God. Yes, I am. Now, what's coming next is tithing, which I think this means like, I am God. If you won't give me the 10th, you'll get a God complex. You'll start thinking it's all about you, that you earned your money, that you own your own problems, got to fix them all. You'll start thinking you're God. He goes, I haven't changed. How many church people have I heard like God changed his mind about tithing? I haven't changed. You should tithe, yes. And because I haven't changed, you descendants of Jacob haven't been destroyed. There's a reason he puts Jacob in here, because Jacob says, of all that comes into me, Lord, I will give a 10th unto you. That is my covenant for myself and my children coming after me. And God's like, I will use that covenant to bless that nation, make that man a nation. And because of that, you haven't been destroyed. He says, you have a long history of ignoring my commands. Okay, some of y'all had nice dads. My dad was nice at the right times. But he also spoke the truth. It doesn't say that the nice will set you free. The truth will set you free. My dad was nice, but he spoke the truth. He says, you have a long history of ignoring my commands. You haven't done a thing I've told you. Return to me so I can return to you. You ask, but how do we return? He's like, I'm adding this. Begin by being honest. What are you talking about? Every person who's dishonest thinks that they're honest, by the way. Do honest people rob God? But you rob me day after day. You ask, how have we robbed you? The tithe and the offering. That's how. Oh my goodness. The tithe, the 10th, and the other on top. And now you're under a curse, the whole lot of you, because you're robbing me. He's like, you went back to your old dad. I cannot protect you over there. This is my yard. This is my kingdom. You bring it in here and you get everything. I can't protect you out there. You want to go live with your stepdad? Like, the devil. Do you know who I'm talking about? Are we clear? Bring your full tithe. Not an eighth, not a 12th, not a tooth. Full tithe, a 10th. That's what the word is translated to the temple treasury. Some people are like, I'm going to start giving. I'm like, well, start. I mean, that's okay, but like, why don't you start with the 10th? So there will be ample provisions in my temple. There's something about this number. Test me. The only place in scriptures where God says test me, the only place you're allowed to test God. Test me and see. Like, try it out. See if I don't open heaven itself to you and pour out blessings beyond your wildest dreams. Vote for Pedro. All your wildest dreams will come true. Napoleon Dynamite. That was my high school. If you want to know what my high school looked like, watch that movie. For my part, he says, I'll defend you against marauders, protect your wheat fields and vegetable gardens against plunderers. You'll be voted happiest nation. I'm just not happy, Pastor. You should tithe, yes. You'll experience what it's like to be a country of grace. God of the angel army says so. So just put it in your budget like I do. It's the first line item in my budget. Look, I don't complain about the electricity bill like I complain about it, but I pay it because I want the lights to stay on. I pay my tithe because I want my spiritual lights to stay on. Because it connects all the other lights too. Don't think that the spiritual light can be off and you get everything else. Like, it don't work like that. So here's a thought that I have. How could Jesus come to Israel? Because the voice of God had been shut off and Jesus is the word of God. How come Jesus come to Israel? And I think it has to do with him saying, well, you started tithing on your mint plants. Maybe the nation started tithing again and maybe Jesus could come. Here's some myths to debunk. You ready? God doesn't need my money. True. Actually, that's not really a myth. True. He doesn't. He has no physical needs. He has no emotional needs. He doesn't need to get healed of anything. He doesn't need you. I think sometimes we think of God like he's the big monkey in Jungle Book that all the little monkeys got to run all the bananas to. You know what I'm saying? Like he's the big monkey just in there eating all the bananas. And God's like, I don't even eat bananas. Bananas are gross, you know. But God's family is made up of humans and children. And adoption costs money and building bunk beds costs money. And God's like, my family's got to take care of my family. So if you take care of my family, though, then I'll take care of your family. It's just the easiest thing in the world for him to do. And he's also trying to make you look like Jesus. John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave not a tenth of heaven. If you have one son, the Prince of Heaven, he gave everything. He gave everything that heaven had. He gave the best. He gave all of it. And you got to understand that asking for a tenth back is just trying to get you to look a little more like Jesus when Jesus came and died on a cross for your sins. So the next myth is church people. It's only a church people myth. Are you saying, I hear this, are you saying if a Christ follower doesn't tithe that God doesn't love us? No. Take some of the words out of there. Are you saying that if I don't give, God doesn't love me? Are you saying that God doesn't love? God is love. What I'm saying you're doing is you're projecting your problem on God. Because God so loved, he gave, but if you don't love, you won't give. Here's another myth. If I don't obey, it won't affect my relationship with God and people. AKA, if I disobey, I still get all the things. Well, the devil's the only one who wants to do that for you. If you disobey, I'll make you happy for about 10 minutes. So if I disobey God and if I keep what's his and it won't affect my relationship with God or with people. Your destiny is to connect somebody with God and somebody with God and people. That's the only way that you connect with God and people is helping somebody else do that. That takes resources to do. Here's one, a guy in the trades world. This is what he said. The church only wants your money. And I'm like, I finally asked, like, have you ever actually been to church? Because I think all that you know about church is what you see on vampire movies and holy water kills vampires, you know. I'm like, we don't even have holy water. But what he didn't really understand, there's a study that's been done in major Canadian cities called the halo effect. The halo effect is the greater ripple effect that happens for every dollar donated to a church. For every dollar donated to a church, the ripple effect is that it saves the city out of pocket. Are you ready? Here's the study. $4.70 for every dollar. So $5 to $1 that is donated to a church saves the city out of pocket because you got to fix broken people. And then you got to build prisons for people. And then you got to mental health. And you got to do all the things that God does in his house for nothing. All we do is administrate that and get it to more people. So meaning, if you give more to the church, your taxes will go down. Where the mayor at? Here's another myth, the law of Moses. Jesus came to do away with it. No, he didn't actually. Jesus came to be the final sacrifice. Jesus said, I never came to do away with the law. I came to fulfill it, the final sacrifice. But tithing didn't start with Moses. Tithing started with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so it didn't even start there. It's addressed there. But to think that generosity has gone away because Jesus came to make you greedy is a little bit weird. Here's another myth. The church must be short of money. Maybe some churches are. Ours was great before you got here and will be great if you go because you're angry about this sermon. It will be great. We could just adopt a lot more kids. That's it. Here's a myth. Jesus never told me to. AKA, if Jesus told me to, I would. Great. Jesus says, what sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, you professional Christians, hypocrites. For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income of your herb gardens. So like you got a mint plant. And you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1 to the Lord. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 to the Lord. So he's like, you guys are meticulous at tithing, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes. I don't know if Jesus wants us to tithe. He never said anything. You should tithe, yes. I don't know if that means what you should tithe, yes. I don't really get it. You should tithe. Dang it. I added that.